Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Welcome Home podcast. I'm your host, Gina Romero, author of the book, Welcome Home, A Guide to Homemaking from the Heart. And we are going to continue our work on fulfilling the mission of the ministry in the book to equip the hardworking wives and mamas of this present generation to live with more peace, more joy, and more beauty every day. And today I have Amanda Scarborough with us. Amanda is amazing. She is a wife, tenured mother, a business owner, and a God-prompted author. And I say that because she did not wake up one day anticipating that she would be an author, but she has written a beautiful, beautiful book called A Beautiful War, and it highlights her experience on the grip of postpartum depression. So Amanda, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Gina, so much for having me.
Absolutely. It's such a privilege. So I want to get right into it because I have a number of questions to ask you.
Sure.
And I think you're so raw and so authentic and so honest. And I just can't wait to start hearing from you and what you have to say to our listeners. So the first question I have is that A Beautiful War is a really striking title. Can you share with us how this phrase came to you and how it captures the heart of your postpartum?
Sure. The first time I heard the title was there's a song by Kings of Leon called A Beautiful War. And I just really connected with that title because when you're in the grip of postpartum depression, you are basically fighting for your life. And it's a battle. Sometimes it's long and hard. Sometimes it's quick. Sometimes you're in the trenches for weeks and months and years. And it truly is a war. And on the healing side of it, I was able to look back and say, wow, even though that was brutal and horrible and hard and awful and dark at some of the most awful times, the beauty on the other side of it, what the Lord did, how the Lord restored, how He healed, how He just helped me reclaim my identity. It was just the most beautiful journey. And so I thought, there's no better title than A Beautiful War.
That's beautiful. So tell us a little bit about your kids. I know we talked about them pre-show, so tell us about your blended family structure.
Sure. So at the age of 22, I became an instant mom to my husband's two little girls. They were 2 and 6 at the time. They are now 32 and 29. Our second oldest daughter had her first baby, which was a little girl. She's 4 months old, so we're totally eating that up and soaking up all the days with that. And then our oldest son that my husband and I had together, he is 20 now. He's in school in Colorado. And then our youngest is one of the main characters in the book is 13 now. So
okay, yeah. Beautiful. Like I shared, we have a blended family too, and it's just such a blessing. And I had met my stepson when he had just turned 4, so I totally get that and how you become a second mother to them. And yeah, that's just so great. And how your man comes with a bonus, when you meet them. Yeah. So, postpartum depression is often talked about clinically, but you bring a really deep spiritual perspective to it in your book. Why was it important for you to tell this story through the lens of faith? And also if you could tell us about how God prompted you to tell this story.
Sure. One of the reasons that the Lord prompted me to do this, to write my story and to share this with other women was I had spoken at a women's event and just shared what I went through and how the Lord was working on me and the journey that I was on for healing and restoration. And the response at the end of that night was mind-blowing. I had a line of women who were coming up and saying, I have experienced that also. I have experienced the shame, the guilt, I don't want to stay there. There were women who came up to me and were like, I haven't experienced those specific things, but I could relate to your story in other ways. And the Lord was just like, you need to share this. You need to show women that there's hope in the dark seasons. And I am that hope. because when I was in the throes of everything, I was searching. Like, I needed help. I wanted help. I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't know anyone else who had experienced it. I got online trying to find books, but like you said, they're all clinical. I didn't have the mental capacity to understand these big medical words and try and find the definition of this and what are they trying to, like, my brain could not process. I needed practical help now. And that was the heart of writing the book, is I wanted to be able to equip women who, whether it is postpartum depression or another season that's hard or dark that they're going through, I wanted to be able to give them practical tools that they could maybe use and tweak for themselves. And like, okay, she tried this, this worked. Let me try this. But if this doesn't work, the Lord will help download something else that will equip them to be able to fight their way out alongside the Lord to be restored wholly and fully.
Yeah. I think that Christian women in particular, are a very underserved demographic for getting the real things of life tied in with the biblical and the faith-based perspective. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, that's great. Can you tell us a little bit about what you were going through and what made you have the story in order for God to prompt you to write the book?
Sure. We were in a season of life where we had the 2 girls, we had our son, at the time, he was 8. And so the girls were in college and high school. He was middle elementary. And so we have businesses, we're small business owners. And so we were busy. We were busy with life and doing things. And so we were fine. We didn't want any more kids. We were in that sweet spot where he's at that age where he can dress himself. He can fix himself a snack, and that kind of thing. And so life was easy, so to speak. And one day I was just like, so I know, like, I had missed my cycle. I was like, oh no, please don't let this be true. And I ended up taking a pregnancy test, and that positive sign popped up. And I was devastated. I did not want that. I did not want the sleepless nights. I did not want to be excluded from family events because I had to stay home with a baby, or just this. I had this moment of just, this is not what I wanted. And that actually opened the door wide open for the enemy to walk in and begin to wreak havoc on my mental health. And I did not realize it at the time, but during my whole pregnancy, I had what I've now learned is perinatal depression, which is a form of depression that you can have while you're pregnant. And so during those 9 months was very tormenting for me. The enemy, just to kind of backtrack a little bit, I'm adopted. So growing up, I never had any quote unquote blood relatives, so to speak of. And I always longed for that. And so when I had our first son, I was ecstatic because I finally had someone who was truly mine, that was truly connected to me, that was a blood relative, And so I had expectations with that. And so when I found out that I was pregnant with our second son, one of the tools that the enemy or weapons that he used was he whispered the lie that our oldest son was going to die. And I don't know where that came from. I don't know why I held on to that. But during my pregnancy, our son started developing headaches. And I just knew he had a brain tumor. He was about to die. I was losing him. And so then that created more anger and bitterness towards the baby because I was like, I don't want you to replace this one. Why are you here? Why are you, just all these things, crazy thoughts, looking back now that I'm like, what? And I was just not in a good place mentally. And so that was one of the ways that the enemy tormented me. And so then when I had the baby, I went into labor on my own, and I ended up having a very traumatic delivery. My delivery with the first one was rainbows and butterflies and the most perfect thing ever. And this delivery was not. I ended up having to have an emergency C-section. They were about to close me up, and they could not find a rag. And so they opened me back up, pulled everything back out, and were like, I literally felt like her hand like up in my diaphragm, digging, trying to find this lost rag. And they ended up knocking me out. And I found out later that the rag was tucked under some other bloody cloths and stuff. And so they ended up finding it. Yeah. And so that in itself was traumatic. So thankfully, my mom could tell because of the C-section. I spent 4 days in the hospital, and I was really, really struggling because I had expectations about the delivery too. You know, I expected at least the delivery will be good. The pregnancy wasn't that great. I was sick the whole time. I was like, the delivery will be good. And it was the complete opposite of good. And so that was just another, nail in the coffin, so to speak, of just now I was dealing with this physical trauma, along with this mental warfare that I was already feeling. And so my mom moved in with us and for about 2 or 3 weeks. And then she had to get back to her life. I was physically recovering. I was hiding my mental turmoil very well. No one knew really that I was struggling that bad. I didn't want to have anything to do with him. Even in the hospital, the nurses were like, Miss Scarborough, you need your baby. And I was like, no, you can feed him. I don't need him. And they were like, no, he's been in the NICU he's been in the nursery since yesterday. You need to have him. And so I would reluctantly have them bring him, and I would leave him in the little carrier, and I wouldn't pick him up, and people would come in and pick him up. And so they didn't notice that it wasn't me not wanting to have anything to do with him. And so my mom stayed with us, and she was taking care of him because I was physically struggling, being able to lift things up and that kind of thing. And so after a couple of weeks, she went back home, and I was terrified. I was terrified to be by myself. I was just consumed with anxiety and fear like I had never experienced before. It was debilitating. And it's very, very hard to describe if you've never experienced something like that, because it took everything I had just to lift my head up some days. And to have a conversation, to answer someone's question, took everything out of me. And so I faked a lot of it because I did not want anyone to look at me and think, well, you're not being a good mom, because I had to be a good mom. What else are you supposed to be? You're supposed to be a good mom. And so I struggled with that tug and pull, so to speak. You're supposed to be happy. This is supposed to be the most joyful moment of your life. But then at the same time, I'm like, I don't want this. I don't want any of this. I don't want to take care of him. But then I have this love in here somewhere that I know, I don't want anything to happen to him, but then I don't want him at the same, it was this mental just tug of war of chaos in my mind. And so my mom had been gone home for probably about 2 weeks, maybe a week and a half to 2 weeks. And I was at home alone with the baby, and I was not sleeping well. I was waking up 3 and 4 times a night, aside from him waking up from the newborn stuff. So I was physically tired. I was emotionally tired. I was exhausted mentally and physically. And he was having a nap, and I was trying to at least get some type of rest to shut my mind down, because my mind would not stop. The turmoil never stopped. And he woke up screaming from the nap, and that broke me. Something in me snapped, and the dark, ugly abyss that I was living in almost consumed us both, and I almost hurt him. And it was so terrifying that in that moment when the Lord rescued both him and I from what I almost did, and he removed that veil of darkness from me, from my eyes, I broke. I collapsed on the floor. I laid him in the middle of the bed because I knew my husband was coming home from work, and he wasn't old enough to roll over or anything yet. And so we had a king size bed. I placed him in the middle of the bed and left him there screaming, and I fell apart on the floor. My husband walked in not knowing what was happening, and he's trying to figure it out. I'm trying to let him know that we're both okay, but I'm not okay, that I needed help. And so I just told him, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't. I need help. I need medication. I need mom to come back. I need help. And so he called his mother over because she lived in a back apartment in on the back of our property. And so he called her over to come and take the baby. And then I called my mom. I was like, I need you to come back. And so the next day she came back and she lived with us for 6 months while I began the healing journey from the postpartum depression.
My gosh, tears were stinging my eyes while you were recounting this. Oh my gosh. That is so deep and so raw and so honest. Thank you so much for sharing your story, because I know there are other women out there that have experienced this too. And God is there. He's on the throne.
And that's what I did on the floor when my husband found me. I had just been surrendering to the Lord. I was like, I can't do motherhood the way I've been doing it. I can't be a wife the way I've been doing it. I can't be me the way I've been doing it. I need you to take this load that I've put on myself, and I'm giving it to you because I'm done. I'm over myself. I'm over everything. I need you to shape me into the woman you want me to be, into the wife you want me to be, into the mother you want me to be, because I can't do it anymore. I can't do it on my own, and I need you. And that was the moment that transformed my life. I had always grown up in church, but that was the moment that the relationship with the Lord began, was in that moment.
Oh my gosh, that's just so much, so epic. Yeah, there is this thing that we try to push through the pain, we try to push through the pressure. I didn't experience postpartum depression. I had a whole myriad of other things. Those that know me know I had a traumatic birth, and she was born 3 months early and at 1 pound, and had just an immense amount of medical issues and things going on. And so there were bits of what you were saying that I could absolutely relate to, being beside yourself. But, tell us why you're so honest. Tell us why you believe in your heart that honesty about the emotional and spiritual struggle here is so essential and so necessary.
I'm so glad you asked that, because when we're not honest and true with ourselves, and you don't even have to go out and announce it to the world, that's what the Lord called me to do. He doesn't call everyone to do that. And you have to protect your story, because not everybody will receive it well. But for me, I had to shine light on the dark places so that the enemy could not use them as weapons against me. Because if I tried to hide any part of this, he would have used it to shame me, to guilt me, to keep me broken. And I refuse to be on that floor ever again in that position that I was in that moment. And I refused to allow the enemy any control over my mental health, over my physical health, over my entire life. Actually, I was done. He messed with the wrong woman. Let me just say that. And so in Revelations, the Lord talks about I can't quote it, but I know it's about the word of your testimony. Yes. When you share your testimony, it brings freedom. It brings freedom to yourself. It brings freedom to other women to be able to step into what the Lord is calling them to, whether it's healing, whether it's a ministry, whether it is whatever the Lord is calling them to, just to be a better mother, a better wife, to heal things in themselves, And so if you do not share the things that the Lord is doing in your life, and how he's restored you, and how he's changed you, and how he has come alongside you and shorn up the ugly parts and put a beautiful scar over them. Our scars are not ugly. They're beautiful because they always point back to Jesus. And that is why I'm so raw and authentic, because it is not out of my own strength. I could not come out of that on my own. I got myself in the mess, but I could not get myself out. And it was only because of the grace and the love of the Lord that I reached for the hem of his garment and clung to it and pulled myself out with his help.
Yeah. The verse, I had to look it up. It's Revelation 12:11. And what is this? This is their, the New Living Translation says, and they have defeated him by the blood of the Lamb and by their testimony, and they did not love their lives so much that they were afraid to die. So I think it goes on to say, they will be saved. And that's just what happened in your situation. Was because you said I got myself into it, so evident, and it serves as evidence of the unseen realm, and the fact that there is a spiritual world.
Yes.
I remember reading the book This Present Darkness, and I don't remember who the author is, but I highly recommend the book. It's amazing because it goes through, it's written as if it's a novel, and it goes through the story, kind of like the Screw Tape Letters by C.S. Lewis, where it really illustrates for you and gives you something that you can wrap your head around to understand the principalities, the dark forces of this world, and how Satan is the enemy of the air and of this world. And that's what hit you. That's what got you. Because you didn't want to feel this way. You didn't choose this. When people don't understand like why bad things happen to good people, there is an evil presence here on this earth, but take heart and fear not, for I have overcome the world. He will strike your heel and you will crush his head. We have the victory on the cross in Jesus Christ. Amen.
Right.
And so, we're not given a spirit of fear or of timidity, but of valor and strength, because God has already won the war, and through
That's
Christ.
So funny you said that, because that is the exact scripture that my husband spoke over me when he found me on the floor. That day was that exact verse.
And the truth of God, the armor of God is so important for us as Christians to really understand and know. And I had done an episode on the show. Each month I try to write my own episode, and just God always meets me in the writing and kind of gives me what to say and what to share. And for this particular one, it was recovering after childbirth, using the armor of God. And we have to take up the shield of faith, and we have to take up the sword of the word of the Spirit, and the helmet of salvation to prepare for the day of evil, when the enemy comes, and we know he's roaming around like a lion seeking who he can devour. And it's, we as modern day Christians don't really understand, chances are many of us have never seen a lion in the wild.
Right.
Or maybe at the zoo, a well-fed one that's, handled by professionals. But when we were on our honeymoon, I mentioned, just in kind of sharing our pre-show, our experiences of looking at that stick and having the result of pregnancy, and how ours in that moment were so different.
Right.
And, the honeymoon and stuff, we went on a safari to South Africa, and we saw lions and lionesses. And while we didn't see them hunt, we came upon, just immediately after, the takedown of a kudu by 3 cheetahs. And it was really, really crazy. Those things are fast and powerful, and they are hunters. And so when you kind of think about the animal kingdom and how Satan as a lion, it's really scary, because it's very real. And if we're not for it, and even if we are, there are times where God will allow, and it's for his purpose, plans, and pleasure, and for what he has. And you have now written this wonderful book, A Beautiful War, and you're blessing other Christian women that have experienced postpartum depression and need help. And that's beautiful. So part of, your story shows that healing is a slow and layered process, and it does not happen overnight. And I think many of us who have had our babies, we don't, some snap back right after. I don't know, sometimes I see on social media, girls got her 2-week-old and her thigh gap back, and that's just not me, at all. But it can absolutely be a slow process. So how can women give themselves permission to heal at a pace that honors both their emotions and their faith, and is independent of what they may see?
Don't compare yourself to online, because yeah, that's a whole nother level. Thankfully, I didn't have that added pressure going through that, because that would have just done me in, But really just give yourself grace. The Lord gives us grace when we make mistakes, and we're not perfect. We're not going to get it right every single time, but we can do better. We can do better the next time. And that was really, I allowed myself to heal. And you might say, what do you say about that? What do you mean by that? And I allowed myself to grieve. They don't tell you in motherhood that there is a level of grief that comes with it, because you're grieving a life that you no longer have. You can't just get up and go to a concert with your husband on the whim if you feel like it, or run to the movies if you want to, or let me just jump in the car and go to the gas station and grab a Coke or whatever. Those days are over. And there is a level of grief to that, And at the same time, you're experiencing joy, a joy that is something you've never felt before. And so how can grief and joy coexist? That it's not something that our minds think like, these are going to be happening simultaneously, but they are. And so you have to allow yourself to feel all the emotions, but not let them control you. You control them. And that was what I had to learn how to do, was when the anxiety hit, not to allow it to control me. I felt it, I experienced it, and I said, Lord, you're greater than this. This is not from you. I need you to help me remove it. And I just began to pray. One of the things that really got me through in the beginning was the song Jesus Loves Me, because there were moments where I couldn't even form a thought, but I knew that Jesus loved me. And that was the only thing I could form in my mind to be able to fight whatever I was feeling. And that actually became something that, I still do it today. That is my reminder. Jesus loves me. And that song had been imprinted in me since a baby, basically. And so I knew down within my soul that Jesus loved me and I was not alone, even though I felt alone in some of those moments. And so just give yourself grace, allow yourself to heal, allow yourself to feel the feelings, but know that there is a stronger force, and that force is Jesus. And all you have to do is say his name, and the emotion or the moment or the feeling might not flee in that moment like you're expecting it. But for me, it was a process. He had to teach me in those moments how to cling to him, so that years down the road, when our house caught on fire, my husband almost died of a heart attack, I almost died from a minor procedure, I knew that the Lord had us, and everything was going to be okay. No matter what it looked like, we were going to be okay.
Wow. What a powerful story. I am so grateful for you. I'm so grateful for you being with us on the show, Amanda. Just thank you so much. How can listeners get in touch with you or get a copy of your book?
It's sold wherever books are sold, Amazon, Books A Million. You can purchase a signed copy on my website at amandalscarborough.com. You can connect with me on Instagram at amanda.l.scarborough.
Very good. Again, thank you so much for being on the show and for everyone
Thank you for
listening.
having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was great.
My distinct privilege and pleasure. So, as I always like to say, bye for now.
Bye.